Her ex drugged her cocktail and the Mafia boss noticed. What he did next left the entire bar silent. The clinking of ice against glass felt too loud. Isla Warren forced a smile, raising her cocktail to meet her best friend. "To unemployment," she said, her voice thin. "To freedom," Talia corrected, her own glass tapping Isla's with a solid, cheerful thunk. "To finally quit that soul-sucking job and to get your life back. I am so proud of you. Isla, you have no idea." Isla's smile wavered. She took a sip. Gin and elderflower. It tasted like hope, but she wasn't sure she remembered what to do with it. Freedom. It felt more like a free fall. Quitting her job at the gallery was just the final, trembling piece of a life she was trying to dismantle. The real celebration, the one she couldn't even say aloud, was escaping Nathan. It had been 6 weeks. 6 weeks since she had packed a single bag while he was at work. 6 weeks since she had blocked his number, his email, and every social media profile he had. 6 weeks of sleeping with a chair wedged under her doorknob. 6 weeks of feeling like a phantom in her own skin. "This place is nice," Isla said, deliberately changing the subject in her own head. She looked around. The Crimson Quill was all low light, deep velvet and dark wood. It was tucked away in River Court, a neighborhood of old money and quiet streets, the kind of place that didn't need a sign, the kind of place where people spoke in murmurs and the bartenders wore vests. It felt safe, expensive, but safe. Talia grinned, sipping her own drink. "Only the best for my newly liberated bestie? I heard this is the hardest lounge to get into in all of Chicago. I had to call in a favor with a guy from work." Neither of them knew that the only favor that mattered here was the one that paid Domenico Velez. Neither of them knew that the quiet man in the dark suit who had nodded to the hostess was the owner, not just of the Crimson Quill, but of most of River Court. Isla was starting to relax, truly relax. For the first time in over a year, she was laughing at a story Talia was telling about her cat when the air in her lungs turned to ice. He was here. She didn't know how she knew. It was a pressure change, a drop in temperature that only she could feel. Her gaze flickered past Talia's shoulder, toward the entrance, and there he was, Nathan. He was scanning the crowd, and that predatory focus, that look of ownership, hadn't changed. Then his eyes found her. His entire posture softened, melting into a mask of remorse, relief, and gentle surprise. It was an act so practiced it could win awards. "Oh my God," Isla breathed, her hand tightening on her glass. "No." Talia turned, her smile fading. "Isla, what's—" She saw him, her face hardened. "You have got to be kidding me. How did he even find us?" "He always finds me," Isla whispered, the warmth of the lounge, the taste of gin. It all vanished. She was back in her old apartment, the walls closing in. His voice a low, constant hum of criticism. "You're too sensitive. Isla, no one will ever love you like I do. You'd be nothing without me." He started walking over. "Don't look at me," Isla commanded Talia, her voice fierce, though her hands were shaking. "Just talk. Pretend he's not here. Maybe he'll leave." But Nathan lived on confrontation. He thrived on forcing his presence into spaces where he wasn't wanted. "Isla? Talia? Wow, this is fate." His voice was smooth, warm, and utterly false. He smelled of the same expensive cologne he always wore, a scent she used to love, a scent that now made her want to be sick. Talia, ever the protector, crossed her arms. "What do you want, Nathan?" "Hey, T, I just wanted to talk to Isla just for a minute." He looked only at Isla, his eyes wide with a carefully crafted vulnerability. "Isla, please, I know I messed up. I've been going to therapy. I'm doing the work. I just want to tell you I'm sorry. You don't have to talk to me ever again. Just let me apologize." Isla stared at the table. She could feel the stares of the people nearby. He was doing this on purpose, making a scene quietly, forcing her to be polite to avoid embarrassment. It was his signature move. "I don't want to talk. Nathan," she said, her voice barely audible. "Isla, come on, he's right here," Talia murmured, her voice laced with the discomfort he was creating. Just let him say his piece so he'll leave. Talia didn't understand. She saw a pathetic ex. Isla saw a wolf. I have to go to the restroom, Isla suddenly announced, standing up, her chair scraping loudly. It was cowardly, but it was the only escape she could think of. She couldn't breathe. Isla, wait, Nathan started, his hand reaching for her. She flinched, pulling her arm back as if he were on fire. Don't touch me. The entire bar seemed to dim. Nathan's face flashed, the mask slipping for a fraction of a second, revealing the cold rage beneath. Then it was back. The hurt. Sad puppy. Okay, I'm sorry, I won't. I'll just be right here. Talia, will you just keep her drink safe? Isla didn't look back. She pushed her way through the small crowd, her heart hammering against her ribs, her breath coming in short, painful gasps. She locked herself in the stall, pressing her forehead against the cool metal, willing herself not to cry. Back at the table, Nathan gave Talia a watery smile. She really hates me, doesn't she? Talia's expression was torn. She just needs time. Nathan, we're having a girls' night. You should go. I know, you're right. He sighed. A performance of deep, tragic regret. He slid his hands into his pockets. It's just I miss her so much. Look, I'll leave. Just tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'm trying. We'll tell her, Talia said, her tone clearly a dismissal. Thanks, T. He turned to walk away, then accidentally stumbled, his hand brushing against the table. Whoops. Clumsy. So sorry. He steadied himself near Isla's chair. Talia was already looking at her phone, signaling the conversation was over. In that second, Nathan's back was to Talia. His body shielding the table, his hand, which had come from his pocket, hovered over Isla's drink. A small, white powder fell from his curved palm into the glass. It dissolved instantly. He straightened up. Have a good night, Talia. You too. Nathan. He walked away, not toward the exit, but toward the bar, ordering a drink like a man with nowhere to be. His eyes fixed on the hallway to the women's restroom. He hadn't been clumsy. He'd been precise. And he hadn't been unseen. In the darkest, most elevated booth of the lounge, Domenico Velez sat perfectly still. He hadn't been watching the woman. He hadn't been watching her friend. He had been watching the man who had entered his establishment with the eyes of a hunter. Domenico saw everything in his lounge. He saw the shift in the man's posture, the manufactured remorse. He saw the flash of rage when the woman flinched. He saw the way the man's gaze lingered on her, not with love, but with a terrifying, suffocating possessiveness. And he had seen the hand, the stumble, the packet. Luca, the mountain of a man standing at the edge of the booth, had seen the stumble too. Sloppy, Luca murmured. Domenico said nothing. He watched the man, Nathan, settle at the bar, his back to the wall, his eyes on that hallway, waiting like a spider. A low growl vibrated in Domenico's chest. He despised men like that, men who used smiles to hide their poison, men who mistook kindness for weakness, men who preyed on women in his place. Boss? Luca asked, sensing the shift in his boss's stillness. Domenico's eyes were flat, cold. The one at the bar. He just drugged the brunette's drink. The one who went to the bathroom. Luca's entire body tensed. I'll take him. No, wait for her to come back. Domenico's voice was low, absolute. I want to see her first. I want to see what he does. Domenico was a patient man. He ran his entire operation on patience. But as he watched the man at the bar, every second that passed made the predator in him want to tear the other man apart. Isla returned 5 minutes later. Her face was pale, her eyes puffy, but she looked more composed. She slid back into her seat. He's gone? She asked, her voice small. He's gone, Talia said, squeezing her hand. Well, he's at the bar, but he said he was leaving. He seemed really sorry. Isla's stomach twisted. He always seemed. Talia, he's not sorry. He's just not. She reached for her drink, her hand trembling. She needed warmth, the false courage. She needed to wash the taste of him out of her mouth. She raised the glass and took a long, desperate sip. In the booth, Domenico Velez stood up, Luca moved. "Boss, let me—" "No," Domenico said. His voice was a blade. "This one. I'm handling myself." He moved through the lounge, not quickly, but with a terrifying locomotive purpose that parted the crowd before him. He didn't look left or right. His eyes were locked on Isla. Isla had just set the glass down. The taste was wrong, bitter, chalky, underneath the gin. She frowned. "This tastes—" She never finished the sentence. A shadow fell over their table. A large man in a suit so perfectly tailored it looked like armor. He was tall, with dark hair slicked back, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes so dark they seemed to swallow the light. He was, in a word, beautiful. And in another word, terrifying. He didn't speak, not to her, not to Talia. He reached down, his movements fluid and economical, and took her glass from the table. "Hey," Talia started. "That's her." He ignored her. He lifted the glass, not to his lips, but to his nose. He inhaled sharply. Once. His eyes, which were already cold, became arctic. He looked past her, toward the bar. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He simply nodded to Luca, who had appeared at his shoulder. "The man at the bar, in the blue shirt. Take him to the office," Domenico said. His voice was a low rasp, like gravel and velvet. "Quietly. Don't let him make a sound, and send 2 men to block the front and back exits. No one leaves until I say so." Luca just nodded and moved. He and another man, one Isla hadn't even seen, flanked Nathan at the bar. Nathan looked up, confused, ready to protest, and then he saw Luca's face. All the color drained from his own. He was lifted from the stool, his arms pinned, and he was gone. Steered through a back door before he could utter a single word. The entire bar had fallen silent. The music, the murmurs, everything. The only sound was the clinking of ice as the bartender, his hands shaking, pretended to polish a glass. Domenico's attention returned to the table, to Isla. Her heart was pounding. "Who are you? What's going on?" He placed the glass back on the table, but didn't let go of it. His dark eyes bored into hers. He wasn't looking at her with pity. He was looking at her with a raw, unfiltered rage that was, strangely, not directed at her. "The man you were with," he said, his voice quiet, but it carried in the silence. "The one who just left. He put something in this." Isla's world tilted. It wasn't a figure of speech. The room, the dark wood, the velvet chairs, the beautiful, terrifying man in front of her. It all began to swim. "What?" she breathed. "No, he wouldn't—" But the bitter taste was still on her tongue, the wrongness of it. "He did," the man stated. It was a fact, like gravity. "Oh my God," Talia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, Isla!" When he stumbled your drink." The first wave hit, a dizzying, nauseating rush that started in her stomach and climbed up her throat. Her limbs suddenly felt like lead. The single sip. She'd only taken a single sip. "I feel sick," she whispered, her hand fumbling for the table to steady herself. The man's expression didn't change, but he moved. He was in her space before she could even process it. "It's all right. I think I'm going to be sick. I know." She tried to stand, but her legs were water. She pitched forward, a cry of panic in her throat. He caught her. He didn't just steady her. He simply slid one arm under her knees and the other around her back and lifted her from the chair as if she weighed less than a child. Isla's head fell back, her vision blurring. She was in his arms. She was being carried. She saw the faces of the other patrons, mouths open, eyes wide. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. She was the center of a scene she didn't understand. "Put me down," she tried to say, but her tongue was too heavy. "Please, Masari, I have you," he rumbled. The vibration of his voice in his chest was the only solid thing in her spinning world. He carried her past the bar, past the frozen staff, toward a private elevator she hadn't seen. Luca was there, holding the door open. The doors slid shut, encasing them in a small, mirrored box. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that was less a home and more a fortress of glass and steel. The Chicago skyline glittered on every side, a billion cold diamonds. He didn't slow down. He carried her through the vast, empty living room, straight into a bathroom so large it echoed. It was all black marble and chrome. He set her on her feet on the cold floor, but his hand stayed on her, steadying her. "You're safe," he said. The sickness won. Her body convulsed, a violent, painful heave. She barely made it to the toilet. She was violently ill, the elderflower and gin and poison all coming up in a burning rush. It was humiliating. It was raw. She was vaguely aware of him, of his large, imposing presence. He wasn't watching. He was helping. His hand, large and warm, found her back. He was rubbing slow, firm circles between her shoulder blades. He used his other hand to pull her hair back from her face, his grip surprisingly gentle. "It's all right. Get it out," he said again, his voice the same low, steady rumble. She wept, tears of shame and fear and illness. "I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing," he commanded, but not unkindly. When she was finally empty, she collapsed back against the wall, shivering, her body trembling with tremors she couldn't control. He was there with a cold, wet cloth. He didn't hand it to her. He knelt in front of her, on the marble floor, in his $1,000 suit, and gently wiped her face. Her eyes fluttered. He was too close. The room was too bright. "Sleepy," she slurred, her head lolling. "I know." He lifted her again. This time, she didn't fight. She was too tired. She buried her face in his suit jacket. It smelled like cedar and wool and something uniquely him. He carried her to a guest room, all soft grays and white. He laid her on the bed, on top of the comforter. He didn't try to undress her. He just pulled off her shoes, letting them drop to the floor. He pulled a thick cashmere blanket from the end of the bed and draped it over her, tucking it around her shoulders. She was already fading, the drug pulling her under. He pulled a chair from the corner of the room and placed it next to the bed, and he sat. Isla's eyes cracked open one last time. He was just a shape in the darkness, a silhouette against the city lights, a guardian or a monster. She couldn't tell. "Why?" she whispered, the word thick on her tongue. He was silent for a long moment. He watched her, his face an unreadable mask in the shadows. "He was wrong," he said finally. She frowned, not understanding, but sleep was too strong. She let it take her. The last thing she was aware of was the steady, grounding weight of his hand resting on her back. Domenico Velez sat in the dark and watched a stranger sleep in his house. He had 1,000 things to do, a man to interrogate, a mess to clean up in his lounge, a business to run. Instead, he sat. He had not saved her. He did not save people. He had simply intervened. He had seen a predator try to claim a kill in his territory, and he had stopped it. It was pest control. But as he watched the unconscious tremors run through her, as he saw the faint, fading bruise on her wrist from where she'd flinched away from the man, it felt like something else. It was a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to have in a very, very long time. He recognized the look in her eyes from before, the look of a hunted animal that had forgotten how to fight, that only knew how to be small. He had seen it in his mother's eyes, once, a long time ago. He felt the strange, unfamiliar burn of protectiveness. It was a complication. It was a weakness. He ran a hand over his face, the rasp of his stubble loud in the silent room. He should leave. He should post Luca at the door and go deal with the animal in his basement, but his hand stayed where it was, resting lightly on her back, rising and falling with her breathing. And Domenico Velez, for the first time in a decade, did not do the thing he was supposed to do. He stayed. The first thing Isla registered was the fabric. It was smooth, impossibly smooth, and cool against her skin. Silk. She was wearing a man's silk robe, dark gray, and nothing else. Her eyes snapped open. The room was not hers. It was vast, silent, and decorated in shades of charcoal and white. The ceilings were high, and one entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking a slice of the Chicago skyline. Gray and indifferent in the early morning light, her stomach clenched, not with sickness, but with a new, sharp-edged panic. Where were her clothes? Her jeans, her boots, her simple cotton top, gone. Embarrassment, hot and suffocating, flooded her. She remembered. The bar. Nathan, the man. The beautiful, terrifying man who had carried her. The sickness. The humiliation. Oh, God. She'd been sick all over him. She pulled the robe tighter, the belt cinching, her knuckles white. She was on a bed, a massive, unadorned platform of dark wood. Her purse was on the nightstand, placed there neatly. Her phone was beside it, cautiously. She slid off the bed. The carpet was thick, plush. Swallowing her footsteps, she padded to the door, her heart hammering. It was unlocked. She cracked it open. The penthouse was silent. The black marble from the bathroom last night seemed to cover the floors of the main living area. The furniture was minimal, expensive and cold, and he was there. He was standing by the opposite wall of windows, the one that faced the lake, holding a cup of coffee. He was dressed, not in a suit, but in a simple black long-sleeved shirt and dark pants. The clothes were casual, but they clung to his frame, outlining the lean, hard muscle beneath. He looked less like a businessman and more like a panther resting. He didn't turn. He just spoke. His voice the same low, gravelly rumble she remembered. There was coffee on the counter. Black. He knew she was awake. He had probably heard the door open, heard the shift in the air. Isla's hand tightened on the door frame. "Where are my clothes?" she asked. Her voice was a dry croak. "They were soiled," he said simply. Still not looking at her. "I had them disposed of. There are clothes for you in the closet. They should fit." She flushed. "Disposed of. You have no right." Now he turned. Slowly, his dark eyes met hers across the vast expanse of marble. There was no apology in them, no emotion at all, just a flat, unnerving stillness. "You were covered in vomit," he stated. "I gave you privacy in a robe. The alternative was leaving you in them. Would you have preferred that?" Isla flinched. He was right. The sheer, cold logic of it disarmed her. "No," she whispered, looking at the floor. "Go, get dressed." It was not a request. She retreated, closing the door, her back pressing against it. She was breathing hard. In the walk-in closet, larger than her entire bedroom, she found them, a stack of new clothes, tags still attached, black leggings, a simple gray cashmere sweater, new socks, new sneakers, all her size. The intimacy of it, the presumption, made her stomach twist all over again. How had he known? She dressed, the soft cashmere feeling like an apology. When she emerged, he was sitting at the massive kitchen island, a second cup of coffee waiting for her. He hadn't touched his own. She sat opposite him, as far as she could get. "Drink it," he said. She took a sip. It was black, strong and scalding hot. It burned on the way down, but it cut through the fog in her head. "My friend," Isla said, her voice stronger. "Talia, is she—" "She's fine. My driver took her home last night. She has your purse. I kept your phone here." "You kept going through my purse?" "I needed your phone," he said, unbothered. "I had to make sure you were not reachable by anyone else." A cold dread, separate from the nausea, began to creep in. "Anyone else? You mean Nathan?" He nodded, taking a slow sip of his own coffee. "What did you do to him?" she asked, the question trembling in the air. "He is being handled." The words were so simple, so final. "Handled? What does that mean? Did you call the police?" "I need to file a report." He almost smiled. It wasn't a real smile. It was just a cold twitch at the corner of his perfect mouth. "The police are not involved, and they will not be. But he drugged me. I'm aware of what he did." His voice dropped, and the rage she'd seen last night flickered, a banked ember in his eyes. "He is in a place where he cannot harm you. He's being asked questions." Isla's blood ran cold. Asked questions. She knew what that meant. She had seen movies, but this wasn't a movie. This man was real. The penthouse was real. "Who are you?" she breathed. "My name is Domenico Valles." He said it like it should mean something to her. It didn't. It just sounded expensive. "And what are you? A security guard?" This time, the smile was real. It was brief, and it was terrifying. "Something like that." He stood, the moment over. "I'm having my driver take you home." She stood too, wary. "I can get my own ride." "You cannot." His tone was absolute. "You will be driven." You will go to your apartment and you will wait for my call. I am giving you a new phone. Your old one is compromised." Compromised? Nathan wouldn't. He's not that smart. He was smart enough to drug you in a crowded lounge. He was smart enough to follow you there. Domenico walked to a drawer, pulled out a small, slim burner phone, and slid it across the island. He then took a card from his wallet and placed it beside the phone. "This is my private number. It is for you. Do not lose it. Do not give it to anyone. Do not call the police. You call me. If he comes near you, if you see him, if you even think you see him, you call me. Do you understand?" Isla looked at the phone and the card. This was insane. She was a normal person. She had just quit her job. She was supposed to be celebrating her freedom, and she had woken up in a Mafia movie. "I don't want this," she said, her voice small. Domenico Valles stepped closer, invading her space. He was so tall. He smelled like coffee and cedar. He didn't touch her, but he leaned in, and she was pinned by his proximity. "You do not have a choice in this," he said, his voice a low, soft command. "He chose to harm you in my place. That makes it my business. Now, you are my business. Go home. Luca is waiting for you downstairs." He was giving her space, but it was a space he defined. He was letting her go, but only on his terms. The ride home was silent. Luca, the mountain from the bar, drove the black sedan with unnerving calm, his eyes always on the mirrors. When he pulled up to her small, 3-story walk-up in Wicker Park, he didn't just drop her off. He got out, walked her to the main door, and waited until she was inside. She felt his eyes on her back as she climbed the stairs. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor. Unit 2. B. She was shaking, her hand fumbling with the keys. The cashmere sweater felt too hot, the new phone heavy in her pocket. She put the key in the lock. It wasn't locked. She froze. She always locked her door. She was paranoid about it. She checked it 3 times, a habit Nathan had called a flaw. Her breath hitched. The door was already open, just a fraction, a single terrifying inch. She could smell him, his cologne, the one she had despised last night. He was there, or he had been. She backed away, her hand fumbling for the new phone. Her fingers were numb, barely working. She pulled it out, pressed the only number programmed into it, and held it to her ear. It rang once. "Domenico," his voice. No. "Hello," just his name. "He's here," she whispered, her voice cracking, her back hitting the hallway wall. "I'm at my apartment. The door is open. I think he's inside." There was a pause, not of hesitation, of calculation. Then she heard the sound of a car engine roaring to life over the phone. "Are you in the hallway?" he demanded. "Yes. Go downstairs. Stand on the sidewalk. Do not go inside. Do not hang up. Luca is on his way. I'm on my way. I will be there in 5 minutes." He hung up. She ran. She scrambled down the stairs, bursting out onto the street, gasping for air. She looked up and down the block. Empty. She didn't wait 5 minutes. It felt like 2. A black SUV, not the sedan, screeched around the corner, ignoring the stop sign, and slammed to a halt in front of her building. Domenico got out of the driver's side. He was not the calm, coffee-drinking man from the penthouse. He was the man from the bar. His face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. His suit jacket was on, and as he moved, she saw it, the black metallic gleam of a gun, tucked into a holster against his ribs. He strode past her, not even looking at her. "Stay in the car!" The SUV was still running. Isla scrambled into the passenger seat, pulling her knees to her chest, her body shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Domenico didn't knock. He didn't test the door. He hit it with his shoulder, a single, brutal impact that sent it flying open, crashing against the inside wall. She heard the wood of the door jamb splinter. "Nathan!" he roared, his voice filling the entire building. It was not a call. It was a summons. She heard him moving, sweeping the small apartment. Each footstep was heavy, measured. She heard a closet door thrown open. She heard the shower curtain torn back. Silence. Then he reappeared at the building's entrance, his face dark. He walked to the SUV, opened her door, and looked at her. "He's not there," he said. "But I smelled him," she whispered, tears of terror and frustration welling. "I know." Domenico's jaw was tight. He reached into the apartment, his hand grabbing something from the hook by the door. He threw it onto the street. It was Nathan's jacket, the one he had been wearing at the bar. "He left it for you," Domenico said, his voice flat. "A trophy, to let you know he could get in. That he can get to you whenever he wants." A sob escaped her. He was right. It was a message. "I own you. I can get to your home, your job, your drink." Domenico watched her, his expression unreadable. Then he made a decision. "You are not staying here tonight. You are not staying here until he is found." He shut the car door. He walked around, got in, and the locks clicked, sealing them in. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice broken. "My home." He pulled away from the curb, his driving fast and aggressive. "It is the only place in this city he cannot touch you." Back at the penthouse, the silence was different. It was heavier. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed one to her, and sat on the low-slung leather sofa. "This is not your apartment," she said, looking around the glass fortress. "This is a prison." "It is a safe house," he corrected, taking a sip. "The safest in Chicago." Isla sat across from him, in a chair that was hopelessly far away. She took a sip of the whiskey. It burned, but it was a different kind of burn than the coffee. This one was numbing. "I have to ask you again," she said, her voice quiet. "Who are you?" "Domenico." He looked at her over the rim of his glass. He seemed to be weighing his words, weighing her. "You live in Chicago. You've heard of the Valles family." She thought, Valles. She'd seen it in the papers, usually in connection with real estate development or transport union disputes, always with a shadow of something darker. Her blood turned to ice. You're that Valles? The Mafia?" He didn't confirm or deny. He just watched her. "I am a businessman. Isla, I run this city, and I protect my assets." "And I am an asset?" "You are something I am protecting." He set the glass down. "I am not a good man. I do not pretend to be. I do not deal in comforting lies. Nathan is a monster of convenience. I am a monster of necessity. But I am telling you the truth. You are safer with me than you are anywhere else." She believed him. That was the most terrifying part. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. The guest room was too quiet. She found him on the balcony, the one that wrapped around the building, staring out at the city lights. The wind was cold, but he didn't seem to feel it, still in his black shirt. She wrapped the silk robe around her. He heard her, turning his head. "You should be sleeping," he said. "I can't." She stood beside him, her hands on the railing. The glass barrier was all that separated them from a 50-story drop. "I need to know why. Last night, you didn't know me. You could have just let it happen. Most people would have." He was silent for a long time, the wind whipping his dark hair. "I saw your face," he said, his voice so low she barely heard it. "When he was at your table, before you went to the restroom. I saw your face when you flinched." He turned to her, his body angling, trapping her against the railing, though he wasn't touching her. "And I saw your face when you came back. You were trying so hard to be brave. You were terrified, but you were still fighting." He paused, his dark eyes searching hers, seeing more than she wanted. "I helped you," he said, his voice a raw whisper. "Because you looked like you didn't think anyone would." Her breath caught. A single tear, hot and sudden, escaped and ran down her cold cheek. He saw it. He saw all of it. He saw the core of her, the thing Nathan had tried so hard to stamp out. He lifted his hand, his knuckles rough, and gently, so gently she almost didn't feel it, he brushed the tear away. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't what?" he murmured, his face closer now. "Don't be kind. I can't. I am not a kind man. Isla." His breath ghosted across her lips. He smelled of whiskey and the cold night air, and then his mouth was on hers. It was not a gentle kiss. It was not a rough one. It was a claim. It was slow and deep and full of a hunger that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with possession. It was the kiss of a man who had not felt anything in a long time and had just been woken up. His hand moved from her cheek to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, holding her steady, not forcing but insisting. Isla's hands came up, not to push him away, but to grip the front of his shirt, her knuckles pressing into the hard muscle of his chest. She kissed him back. She poured every ounce of her fear, her relief, her terror, and her sudden, shocking desire into it. It was a drowning, and he was the only solid thing. It deepened. His tongue traced her lips, a question. She parted them, and the kiss turned from claiming to exploration. It was a slow burn, a heated, languid exchange that promised 1,000 other things. His other hand found her waist, sliding under the robe to rest on the bare skin of her back, his palm a brand of heat. She moaned, a small, broken sound. And it was that sound that shattered the moment. It was too much. His hand on her bare skin, a man's hand. It wasn't his fault. It was Nathan's. The shadow was still there. She tensed, her hands pushing against his chest. Domenico broke the kiss. Instantly. He didn't push. He didn't ask. He didn't complain. He just stopped. He rested his forehead against hers, his breathing heavy, his eyes closed. He gave her back the space. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I can't, not yet." He pulled back, his hands dropping to his sides. He looked at her, his expression unreadable, but the storm in his eyes was settled. He nodded. "Go to bed." "Isla?" His voice was rough. "Domenico. You set the pace," he said, cutting her off. He turned back to the city. "I will not be him. I will not push. I will not take it. When you are ready, you will come to me. Until then, you set the pace." He left her on the balcony, his words hanging in the cold air. Isla went back to the gray room, to the silk-sheeted bed, and lay awake. Her heart was a trapped bird in her chest. She was terrified of the man who had left her jacket, and she was terrified of the man who had respected her no. She didn't know which was worse. She didn't know if she was running from fear or toward a different, more dangerous kind of desire, or if, Domenico's world, they were just the same thing. The first 3 days in Domenico Valesi's penthouse were a study in luxurious confinement. Isla had a bedroom the size of her entire apartment, a closet full of clothes that had appeared as if by magic, and food that tasted like it was from another world. She also had Luca, or one of 2 other men, always standing, always silent, just outside whatever room she was in. She was a ghost in a glass tower, drifting from window to window, watching a city she could no longer enter. Domenico was gone for long stretches, swallowed by the private elevator, leaving the penthouse in a wake of cold cedar and unspoken business. He would return late, his face etched with a fatigue that was not physical, and find her in the vast living room, curled up on the leather sofa, reading a book she could not remember. On the 4th night, he came in while she was still awake. He loosened his tie, his eyes dark. "He's not just an obsessed ex," Domenico said, his voice flat. He poured himself a whiskey, the ice cracking in the silent room. He did not offer her one. "What do you mean?" Isla asked, putting her book down. "My men have been thorough. Nathan wasn't just a gallery manager. He has connections. He owes a great deal of money to a man named Elias Costas." The name meant nothing to Isla. To Domenico, it was a migraine. "The Costas Syndicate," he continued, swirling the amber liquid. "A small, brutal gang of animals who think they are more important than they are. They have been trying to get a foothold in my territory for a year. They hate my family." He finally looked at her, his eyes pinning her to the sofa. "Your ex-boyfriend, Isla, is not just a stalker. He is a pawn for a man who wants to hurt me. And now, they see you as a way to do it." Isla's stomach dropped. "Because of you. Because you helped me." "Because he drugged you in my lounge," Domenico corrected, his voice lethally soft. "He brought his filth into my home. And now, he has allied himself with my enemy." The true nature of her prison became clear. It was not to keep her in. It was to keep them out. The revelation unknotted something inside her, a dark, tangled string of shame she had been holding for over a year. That night, over a dinner of grilled fish and wine, she was too nervous to drink. She told him. She told him everything. He did it so slowly, she whispered, staring at the perfect gloss of the dining table. I didn't even see it. He told me my friends were a bad influence, that Talia was too loud, too promiscuous, that she didn't really care about me. Domenico sat at the head of the table, his plate untouched, his entire formidable attention focused on her. He did not speak. He just listened. Then he moved on to my job, how the gallery owner didn't respect me, how I was wasting my talent. He encouraged me to quit, to find myself. But there was no money to find myself with. She had to stop, her throat closing. He handled the finances. He said he was better with numbers. He set up a joint account. All my paychecks just vanished. And when I asked, he would get that look, that wounded look. She looked up, her eyes pleading with him to understand. He would tell me I was accusing him, that I was ungrateful, that I was crazy, that I was just like my mother. And he would be so hurt, so logical, that by the end of it I would be apologizing to him. She looked down at her hands, her knuckles white. I let him drain my bank account. I let him cut me off from my friends. I let him convince me I was nothing. I was so stupid. A single tear hit the table. The scrape of his chair on the marble floor made her jump. He was standing. He walked to her, not fast, but with that same locomotive purpose from the bar. He did not touch her. He just stood over her, a mountain of shadow. Stupid, he repeated. His voice was not angry. It was firm, hard, like bedrock. She flinched, expecting the blow of his agreement. You blame the wound for bleeding, he said, his voice a low command. You blame the skin for bruising. You blame the lung for failing when it is full of water. He crouched, bringing his face level with hers. His dark eyes were burning with an intensity that was almost violent. Do not blame the wound for bleeding, Isla. You blame the one who cut it. He held her gaze, forcing her to see the truth in his. He was not a man who offered comfort. He was a man who offered facts. And the fact was, she was a victim, not a volunteer. He was giving her back her own story, not as a tragedy of her weakness, in which she was complicit, but as a crime of his cruelty. She broke. A sob, raw and ugly, tore from her chest. He still did not touch her. He let her cry, let her purge the year of poison and shame, his presence a silent, unmoving witness. After that night, the air in the penthouse changed, the protection became more visible. Luca was now a permanent fixture. When she had to leave the apartment to sign papers for her old job, Luca and 2 other men, all armed, went with her. They cleared the street, they cleared the building. It took 5 minutes to sign a paper, and it was orchestrated like a military maneuver. The danger was no longer an abstract, it was a suit, standing by the elevator. This new reality settled on her, and with it a cold, hard anger. She was tired of being afraid. She was tired of being wounded. One evening, she found Domenico in a room she hadn't seen. It was a personal gym, but one side of it was a shooting range, separated by thick glass. He was standing in the booth, firing a handgun, the shots precise, deafening even through the soundproofing. He finished, ejected the clip, and set the gun down. He saw her watching through the glass. He motioned for her to come in. He handed her a set of ear protectors. "You've never shot one," he said. It was not a question. "No. You should know how." He picked up the gun, checking it again. "This is my world. Isla, as long as you are in it, you're a target. I will protect you. My men will protect you. But you will not be helpless. You will never be helpless again." He stood behind her, his body a wall of heat. He placed the heavy, cold metal in her hand. "It's a Sig Sauer, 9mm. This is safety. This is the slide. This is the magazine release." His voice was a low murmur, his breath warm against her ear. She was hyper-aware of him, his chest, solid against her back, his hand, large and warm, covering hers, adjusting her grip. "Your stance is wrong. Feet shoulder width. Bend your knees. You are fighting the kick, not braced for it." His hands were on her waist, shifting her, then on her arms, straightening them. Both eyes open, you look down at the sight, not at it. Line it up with the target. She was barely breathing. His scent was all around her, cedar and gunpowder. Her heart was hammering, not from fear of the gun, but from the proximity of the man. "Now," he whispered, his hand on her shoulder. "Squeeze. Do not pull. Squeeze." She squeezed the trigger. The explosion was a shock, a brutal, visceral kick that punched up her arms and into her chest. It was loud. It was violent. She hit the paper target, but she missed the bullseye by a foot. "Again," he commanded. She fired again and again. He corrected her grip, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin of her wrist. He corrected her stance, his hand resting on the small of her back. With every shot, the tension in the room coiled tighter. It was no longer a lesson. It was a dance, a raw, predatory courtship. "Again," he murmured, and this time his voice was rougher. She emptied the clip. She was breathing hard, adrenaline singing in her veins. The power of it, the control, was a drug. "Good," he said. He took the gun from her, his fingers brushing hers. The weapon was hot. She turned to face him, pulling the ear protectors off. Her hair was wild, her cheeks flushed. "It's a lot." "It is," he said. His eyes were not on her face. They were in her mouth. The air was thick. The smell of gunpowder, the shared adrenaline, the memory of his lips, it was all there. "You set the pace," he had said. She set the pace. Isla reached up, her hand trembling, and touched his jaw. The rasp of his stubble was a shock. He did not move. He just watched her, his dark eyes liquid fire, his body held in a stillness that was more potent than any movement. "Isla," he warned, his voice a low growl. "You told me to blame the one who cut me," she whispered, her fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. Not the wound. She was not wounded. Not right now. She was alive. She was angry, and she wanted to. She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was not a request. It was a statement. It was a match to gasoline. For a second he remained perfectly still, a statue of resistance. Then he broke. A sound, a groan from deep in his chest, was swallowed by her mouth. His hands came up, not gently, but with a desperate, raw need. One hand buried itself in her hair, tilting her head back, and the other clamped onto her waist, yanking her against him, lifting her off her feet, his mouth divre questions. This was not the hesitant, whiskey-soaked kiss from the balcony. This was a starving man. This was a fire. He kissed her like he was trying to inhale her, to memorize her, to own her. It was all teeth and tongue and a hunger that matched her own. She clung to him, her fingers digging into the hard muscle of his shoulders, her body arching into his. He broke the kiss, his forehead resting against hers, both of them gasping, their breath mingling. "You are sure?" he rasped, his eyes closed. It was not a question. It was a plea for her to stop him. "I am sure," she breathed. That was all he needed. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, his mouth finding hers again. He carried her from the range, through the gym, and into the penthouse. He did not go to her room. He went to his. His bedroom was dark, the city lights a distant, glittering tapestry. He kicked the door shut. He set her down, but only for a second. His hands were on her, but not with force. With a kind of frantic, desperate reverence. He pulled the cashmere sweater over her head, his fingers tracing the line of her collarbone. She fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, her fingers shaking. He brushed her hands away, his touch gentle. "I have it," he murmured. He tore the shirt open, the buttons scattering across the marble floor. It was raw. It was breathless. It was a silent, desperate language. There were soft moans, muffled by kisses. There were unspoken fears, shared in the way his hands trembled as they traced her face, as if he could not believe she was real. There was a silent, profound need, in the way she arched into his touch, not recoiling, but inviting. He was a man of absolute control, and she was watching him lose it, and in losing it, she found her own. He laid her on the bed, the silk sheets cool against her heated skin. He paused, looming over her, a beautiful, dangerous shadow against the city. He was giving her one last chance to escape. She reached up, her hand on his chest, right over his heart. It was hammering, a wild bird in a cage, just like hers. "Stay?" she whispered. He came down to her. And the rest of the world, the danger, Nathan, the Costas syndicate, it all dissolved. There was only the darkness, the silk, and the feeling of his skin against hers. Isla woke to the unfamiliar feeling of being completely, utterly safe. She was tangled in silk sheets, and she was tangled in his arms. He was on his back, his breathing deep and even, one arm a heavy, protective weight across her stomach. His other arm was tucked under her head, her cheek resting on the solid warmth of his shoulder. The morning light was just beginning to filter in, painting the room in soft grays. She could smell him, cedar, his skin, and something else, something uniquely Domenico. She lay still, not wanting to wake him, just memorizing. The hard lines of his face, softened in sleep, the dark slash of his eyelashes, the faint, old scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He was beautiful, and he was a killer, and she had never felt safer in her life. She shifted, just slightly, and his eyes opened. They were not groggy. They were instantly awake, instantly clear. Instead of a predator, he just looked at her. A slow smile, a real smile, touched the corners of his mouth. "You're still here. You're still here," she countered, her voice soft. He tucked a stray piece of hair behind her ear, his rough fingers gentle. "I am not going anywhere." The moment, so perfect, so fragile, was shattered by a buzz from the intercom. Domenico's smile vanished. He was out of the bed in one fluid, violent motion, pulling on a pair of pants. "Luca?" "What?" "Boss, you need to see this." Domenico went to the screen. Isla sat up, pulling the sheet around her. "Put it through," he commanded. The large television on the wall, which she had never seen, flickered to life. It was surveillance footage. Grainy, dark, from a security camera, a warehouse. She saw Nathan. He looked strung out, his face thin, his eyes wild. He was talking to a group of men, burly, hard men. One of them, a man with a scarred face, was clearly in charge. There was no audio, but the body language was clear. Nathan was pleading, begging. The scared man was laughing. Then Nathan pulled out a picture. It was her. It was a picture of her from her old job, smiling. Domenico went still. Luca's voice came over the speaker. "That's Elias Costas, the scarred one. The footage was acquired this morning. It's from 2 nights ago. Before, on the screen." Nathan pointed at her picture, then at his own chest. He was making a proposal. Costas clapped him on the back, a gesture that was both friendly and a threat. He agreed. They were planning. They were planning to take her, to use her as leverage. The blood drained from Isla's face. Domenico hit a button, and the screen went black. The room was silent, save for her ragged breathing. "Domenico," she started. "Get dressed," he said. He did not look at her. His back was to her, a rigid wall of muscle. He was pulling on a shirt. He was going into boss mode. "Luca is packing a bag for you. You are moving to the estate, north. It's safer, more secure." "Moving? You mean running?" "I mean living," he snapped, turning on her. The warmth from the morning was gone. His eyes were arctic. "He put a target on your back, Isla. I am taking you out of the line of fire." "No," she said, and the strength in her own voice surprised her. She got out of the bed, the sheet still wrapped around her, a makeshift toga. "I am not a package to be moved. I am not a problem to be hidden. This is not a discussion. I am not going to be the girl in the tower. Domenico, I just found myself again, in your arms. I am not going to let him, or you, lock me away again." "He will kill you," he roared. "Then I will die," she shot back, "but I will not be helpless." They stood there, toe to toe, the hunter and the hunted. Only the roles were no longer clear. He was protecting her. She was protecting the woman he had just helped her become. He stared at her, his jaw working, a war raging behind his eyes. He saw the steel. He saw the woman from the gun range, the woman who had kissed him. He visibly deflated, the rage leaving him, replaced by a weary, profound exhaustion. He scrubbed a hand over his face. "Damn you," he whispered. "I won't go," she said, softer this time. "But I will help. Let me help. I know him. I know how he thinks. He is arrogant. He is desperate. Use me." He looked at her for a long time. He was recalibrating. She was not just a person to protect. She was a partner, an asset. Fine, he said, the word clipped. You do not go north, but you do not leave this penthouse, and you will do exactly as I say. We have intel, financial records. We need to find his leverage, his weakness. He reluctantly agreed. He gave her access to a laptop, to secure files for the rest of the day. She sat at the dining table, not as a prisoner, but as a part of his team, sifting through bank statements, looking for the threads he could pull. At the end of the long night, he was standing behind her, watching her work. She was exhausted, her eyes blurring. He gently, so gently, reached down and tucked a stray piece of her hair behind her ear. The simple, tender gesture made her want to weep. She leaned her head back, resting it against his chest. He was so solid. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" His voice was a low rumble. "For this. For not treating me like glass." He was silent. His hand stayed in her hair. "He hurt you," he said. His voice flat, a statement of fact. "Yes." He paused, and his next words were a vow, a promise spoken to the night. "I have buried men for less than what he did to you." The cage, even a gilded one, was still a cage. Isla felt the invisible walls of the penthouse pressing in. After a week of working on the laptop, of sifting through the grime of Nathan's financial life, she was going stir-crazy. She was a plant starving for sunlight. "I need to get out," she finally said to Domenico, who was reading a report on his tablet, his face illuminated by the cold blue light. He looked up, his expression unreadable. "You are out. This is my home. I mean out," she insisted, gesturing to the windows, to the city she could only see. "I need air that isn't filtered. I need to walk on the sidewalk, just for an hour, with Luca. Please." She saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. He was going to say no. "I am not the woman you found in the bar, Domenico," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You helped make sure of that. Don't treat me like her. I won't break." He stared at her, a long, silent assessment. Then he nodded once. 1 hour. 1. "Luca will not be more than 1 foot from you. You will not talk to anyone. You will not stop for anything. You will go to the park, and you will come back. Thank you." It was a mistake. She knew it was a mistake the second she stepped out of the armored sedan. The air of Lincoln Park was crisp, smelling of autumn and Lake Michigan, but it didn't feel free. It felt exposed. Luca was a shadow to her left, his eyes constantly moving, his hand never far from the lapel of his jacket. She tried to relax, to enjoy the crunch of leaves under her new sneakers. But the old, familiar feeling was there, a prickle on her skin, the feeling of being watched. "It's nothing," she murmured to herself. "It's just paranoia." A man, thin, in a gray hoodie, was sitting on a bench, reading a paper. When she and Luca passed, he stood up and began to walk, keeping a steady distance. "Luca," she said, her voice tight. "I see him." Luca replied, his voice a low rumble, utterly calm. He didn't turn his head. "We're going back to the car. Do not walk faster. Do not look back. Just walk." She did as she was told, her heart a cold stone in her chest. She could hear the footsteps behind them, matching their pace. The man wasn't trying to hide. He was announcing himself. They were almost to the street when the man made his move. He wasn't alone. A second man, larger, stepped out from behind a thicket of trees, blocking their path to the car. "Isla Warren," the first man said, his voice raspy. He had a scarred lip. "Mister, Costas sends his regards. He would very much like to meet you." Isla froze. Luca, however, did not. He didn't draw his gun. He didn't shout. He moved with a speed that was terrifying for a man his size. He grabbed Isla by the arm, shoving her behind him with a force that nearly toppled her. "Car!" he roared. Then he met the larger man's charge. It was not a fight, it was a demolition. Luca's fist, the size of a small ham, connected with the man's throat, a sickening wet crack. The man went down, gagging, his hands clawing at his neck. The first man, the Costas spy, was not a fighter. He was a weasel. He saw his backup collapse. His eyes went wide with panic, and he turned to run. He didn't take 2 steps. Luca was on him, grabbing the back of his hoodie and slamming him face first into the trunk of a parked car. The metal groaned. The man went limp. Luca didn't pause. He grabbed the man by the belt, hauled him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, and threw him into the back of the sedan. He then turned, grabbed Isla's arm, and shoved her into the passenger seat. The entire thing took less than 10 seconds. He was in the driver's seat, the engine roaring, before she had even processed the violence. "Are you?" she stammered, looking at her hands. "Are you all right?" "He's breathing," Luca said, his eyes in the rearview mirror, checking on the man in the back. "Barely. The boss will want to talk to him." When they got back to the penthouse, the air was electric. Domenico was waiting by the elevator, his face a mask of stone. He looked at Isla. A quick, assessing glance. She was pale, shaking but unharmed. He nodded to Luca. "The office." "Now," Luca nodded, carrying the half-conscious spy from the car. "Domenico," Isla started, her hand reaching for his arm. "Go upstairs, Isla," he said, his voice flat, his eyes on the spy. He did not look at her. "Lock the door. Do not come out until I come for you." The rage rolling off him was a physical thing, a palpable heat. It was not directed at her, but it was terrifying. She did as he said. She locked herself in the penthouse, the silence a deafening counterpoint to the violence she had just witnessed. He was gone for 3 hours. When he returned, the penthouse doors sliding open, he looked different. His suit jacket was off. His tie was gone. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing his forearms, which were corded with muscle and spattered, just slightly, with blood. He was washing his hands at the kitchen sink, a methodical, brutal scrubbing, when she found the courage to speak. "He's gone?" she asked. "He is," Domenico said, his back to her. He was scrubbing his knuckles, again and again. "Gone? As in dead?" He turned off the water. He grabbed a towel, drying his hands with the same meticulous violence. "No, not dead. Death is a mercy. He is gone. He will not be found by anyone, and he will not be walking or talking ever again." A chill ran down her spine, colder than the park. "What did you do?" "I got a name, and I got a message." He threw the towel onto the counter. He was just a spy, a low-level idiot trying to impress Elias Costas. Now, Costas knows that what he tried to touch is mine. Isla flinched. What he tried to touch, not who. She crossed her arms, a futile attempt to stop the trembling. "Are you always this ruthless, Domenico? Is this what you do? Just break people?" He walked toward her, and for the first time, she almost took a step back, but she held her ground. He stopped, just inches from her, his dark eyes boring into hers. "Yes," he said, his voice a low, dangerous whisper. "When someone threatens something I care about, I am this ruthless. I am this, and I am 1,000 times worse. Make no mistake, Isla, I am not a good man. I am the man who keeps the other monsters away." She stared at him, her heart hammering. He was a monster. He had just admitted it. He had just tortured a man in the basement of his beautiful lounge, and she had never, ever felt so safe. It was a dark, terrifying, and deeply reassuring thought. He was violent. Yes, but his violence was a shield, and for the first time in her life, it was pointed away from her. She reached up, her hand trembling, and laid it on his chest. He was vibrating with the last of his rage. "I know," she whispered. "I know you are." His eyes softened. Just a fraction, the storm was passing. He covered her hand with his skin still damp, and pressed it to his heart. "Go," he murmured. "Get dressed. We have a party." "A party?" she asked, incredulous. "My annual gala? At the lounge?" His face hardened. "Costas thinks he can scare me. He thinks I will lock my assets away. Tonight, I will show him. I will show you all of Chicago. You are not a weakness. You are my strength, and you are not to be touched." The dress was a weapon. Domenico had it delivered, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. It was black, almost liquid silk, with a high neck and no sleeves, and the back was completely gone, a dramatic, plunging V that ended just at the small of her back. When she walked out of the bedroom, her hair up, her lips painted a deep, defiant red, Domenico, who was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, stopped breathing. He just stared. His eyes traced the line of her bare back, his expression a mixture of raw hunger and something that looked dangerously like pride. "You are," he said, his voice rough, "the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. And tonight, every man in this room will know you are mine." He held out his hand. She took it. The crimson quill was unrecognizable. The dark, moody lounge had been transformed. Thousands of white orchids, strings of lights like fallen stars, a string quartet playing in the corner. The place was packed with the elite of Chicago, politicians, judges, businessmen, and the shadowed figures who truly ran the city. When Domenico and Isla appeared at the top of the grand staircase, the music, the chatter, all of it stopped. A collective, indrawn breath. Isla felt the hundreds of eyes on her dress, on her bare back, but most of all, on Domenico's hand, which was laced firmly with hers. He did not let go. Not for a second. He led her down the stairs, the king in his court, and the woman he was presenting as his queen. The murmurs started, a wave of whispers. "That's her. The girl from the bar, the one he carried out. He never brings a woman not like this. She must be looking at him. He's in love." Domenico ignored them all. He led her to the bar, got her a glass of champagne, his body a constant, protective shield. His hand was on her bare back, his thumb tracing slow, possessive circles. It was a brand. It was a promise. "Let them talk," he murmured in her ear, his breath hot. "Let them see." And then she saw him. It was impossible. He was here. Nathan, he was standing by an archway, looking terrible. He was thin, his suit rumpled, his eyes wide and frantic. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. He was desperate, and he was bold. "Domenico," she whispered, her hand tightening on his. He followed her gaze. The blood in his veins turned to ice. His smile became a predator's snarl. "Luca," he said, his voice a low command. But Nathan was already moving, slinking through the crowd, his eyes locked on Isla. He intercepted her just as Domenico was turning to face a city alderman who had clapped him on the shoulder. "Isla," Nathan whispered, his voice slick, his cologne sour. "Isla, baby, thank God. You have to come with me. He's a monster. You don't know what he is. He's just like me, isn't he? Just a different kind of cage." He grabbed her arm. It was the last mistake he would ever make. Before Domenico could turn, before Luca could get there, Isla reacted, the woman who had flinched, the woman who had hidden in a bathroom, the woman who had been afraid. She was gone. She took her champagne glass and threw the contents in his face, and as he sputtered, shocked, she slapped him. It was not a small slap. It was a full-bodied, palm-stinging, echoing crack that silenced the string quartet. Nathan stumbled back, a red handprint blooming on his white, wet face. Domenico was there. His face was not angry. It was impressive. Luca and two other men grabbed Nathan, their hands like vices. "This isn't over," Nathan screamed, his voice breaking as they dragged him, kicking toward the back exit. "You can't have her. She's mine. This isn't over." The lounge was silent. Isla was breathing hard, her hand tingling. Domenico turned to her. He slowly, deliberately, reached out and took her stinging hand. He brought it to his lips and kissed her palm, his dark eyes never leaving hers. "I believe," he said to the room, his voice a calm, clear command. The quartet was playing Vivaldi. "Please, continue." The music, haltingly, began again. The party was over. He took her upstairs, not to the penthouse, but to the private rooftop, the one he had built above his home. It was a garden in the sky, the wind cold and clean. They stood at the edge, the city a glittering tapestry at their feet. "You were magnificent," he said quietly. "He touched me," she replied, her voice shaking. "He will never touch you again." They were silent for a long time, just the sound of the wind. He was the one who broke it. He turned to her, his face serious, all the bravado of the party gone. "That night, with the gun, and tonight, with him, you are changing. You are changing me." "Isla," he said, his voice rough. He took her hands. "After what you saw tonight, after what you know I did, are you afraid of me?" She looked at him. The killer, the monster, The man who had washed blood from his hands. The man who had kissed her palm in front of the entire world. "No," she whispered. And it was the most honest thing she had ever said. "I'm not afraid of you. Domenico." He looked relieved, but she wasn't finished. "I am terrified," she said, her voice cracking, "of losing whatever this is. I am terrified of going back to being the woman I was. I am terrified that this safety, this strength is just you, and that if you're gone, I'm gone." His face softened, a profound, aching tenderness she had never seen. "Oh, mia cara," he breathed. He pulled her to him, his arms wrapping around her, crushing her to his tuxedo. You are not. It is not me. This strength was always in you. I just cleared the rubble so you could find it." He framed her face with his hands. "You are not afraid of me." "No, and I am undone by you." He kissed her. It was not the fiery, possessive kiss of the gun range. It was not the hungry, claiming kiss of the balcony. This was a promise. It was slow and tender, and it was 1,000 apologies for the world he lived in. It was a vow. His lips were soft, questioning, as if she were the most precious, fragile thing he had ever held. He kissed her like a man dying of thirst who had just found water. She kissed him back, pouring her own newfound strength into it. It was a deep, emotional connection that went far beyond lust. It was two souls, scarred and battered, recognizing each other in the dark. "I am not going anywhere," he whispered against her lips. "I am not going anywhere." His hand was at her back, his fingers tracing the skin the dress had left bare, his touch leaving a trail of fire. But this time, it was a fire that healed. The ringing of his phone was a violation. He stiffened, pulling back, his eyes flashing with anger at the interruption. He pulled the phone from his pocket, the private one. "It's Luca," he said, his face hardening. He answered. "What?" He listened. Isla watched as every ounce of tenderness in his face vanished, replaced by cold, hard steel. His body went rigid. "When?" he asked. A pause. "Find out where. Lock it down. I want snipers. I want everything." We are not taking chances. This ends. Now." He hung up. He looked at her, his eyes 1,000 miles away. Already in a war. "Domenico, what is it?" He took her arm, his grip hard, and led her back toward the elevator. That was Luca. His men finished their conversation with Nathan before they handed him to the police. And? He's a fool, but he's a desperate fool. He gave Costas a timeline. He told them where he thinks you are. "What? When?" Domenico hit the button for the penthouse, his face a mask of cold fury. "Nathan is out. Costas paid his bail. They plan to strike in 48 hours. They think they are going to war with me." He looked at her, his eyes the eyes of a general. "They are." The penthouse, once a fortress of quiet, was now a war room. The 48 hours that followed Luca's call were a blur of cold steel, tactical maps and men in dark suits speaking in low, clipped tones. Domenico was not a man anymore. He was a general. He stood before the wall of windows, not looking at the view, but at the reflection of his team, his jaw set, his eyes cold. Isla watched him, her heart a leaden weight. He was preparing for a war he had inherited, but a war she had ignited. She walked up to him, her footsteps silent on the marble. He didn't turn, but he knew she was there. "Don't," she whispered, her hand hovering, not daring to touch him. "Domenico, please, don't do this." "Do what?" he replied, his voice flat. "He has made his move. He is bringing a rival family into my city, to my doorstep, to take what is mine. What is there to do but answer?" "Send me away," she pleaded, the words tasting like ash. "You said it yourself. The estate. Up north. I'll go. I'll disappear. Let him have his win. Let him think he chased me away. What is won? What am I compared to the lives of your men?" Now he turned. He turned on her, his eyes blazing, the cold mask cracking. He gripped her arms, his fingers digging in, not enough to hurt, but enough to hold. "You think this is about you?" he hissed. "You think this is about a girl? He could have taken money. He could have burned a warehouse, But he came for a person. He tried to turn a human being into a piece of property, a pawn. He did it in my place. He did it to you. And now he allies with my enemy to finish the job. This is not about war. Isla, he was breathing hard, his face inches from hers. She could see the fury, but underneath it, a profound, aching pain. It is about dignity, he said, his voice dropping to a raw whisper. Hi, mine and yours. I will not let him take yours, and I will not let him cost me mine. He leaned in, his lips brushing her forehead, a kiss that was not romantic, but a seal, a vow. He has made his bed. I am just going to make him lie in it. The plan was not to wait for the attack. The plan was to set the stage. Nathan is a coward, Domenico said to Luca, pacing the living room. But Costas is not. They will strike. But they will strike what they think is a soft target. They won't come here. The old apartment, Luca rumbled, reading from a tablet. He still has eyes on it. He thinks she's a prisoner here. He thinks she'll try to run. No, Isla said, her voice clear. Both men turned. She had been sitting on the sofa, listening, a ghost in her own story. No, she repeated, standing up. The fear was a cold, coiling thing in her stomach, but she stood tall. He doesn't think I'll run. He thinks he can lure me out. He thinks I'm still the woman who, if he apologizes enough, will just come back. He's arrogant. That is his weakness. Domenico's eyes narrowed. Go on. You need a trap. You need to lure them, but you're thinking like a strategist. You're thinking about a location. You need to think about him. He doesn't want your territory. He wants me. I am the bait. Domenico's face darkened, a thunderhead of rage. No, an old Valles property, Luca said, ignoring his boss's immediate reaction, his tactical mind seeing it. The old Red Crown distillery. It's abandoned. It's isolated. It's perfect. We leaked a rumor, a fake meat, that she's trying to escape. She needs help. She's going to him. No, Domenico said again, his voice a lethal command. I'm not putting her in the center of a kill box. We will find another way. There is no other way, Isla said, walking right up to him. She did not flinch from the fire in his eyes. You want this to end? You want to pull the root out? I am the root. I know him. I know what he will respond to. I will make the call. You will not. He will know a fake. She shot back, her voice rising. He will know your men. He knows my voice. He knows my fear. And he will know, when he hears me, that I am no longer afraid. And that will drive him insane. He will come. He will be reckless. And you will catch him. I forbid it. Isla, you don't get to forbid me, she cried. You don't get to teach me how to shoot a gun. You don't get to tell me I have strength and then lock me in a tower the second I try to use it. You told me I set the pace. This is the pace. I am not the wound, Domenico. I am the woman who is going to watch you stitch it shut, but I will be in that room. He stared at her, his jaw working, a war raging in his eyes. He saw the woman he had carried from the bar, but she was gone. In her place was this queen. This is his. He saw the steel in her spine, and he knew, with a terrifying, profound pride, that he had helped forge it, and he knew, with an equal, sickening terror, that she was right. You will wear a vest, he said, the words torn from him. I will. You will have a wire. You will have an earpiece. You will have Luca's entire team on a hair trigger. I will. And the second I give the word, the second it goes wrong, you will get on the ground and you will not move until I am pulling you out. Do you understand me? I understand. He grabbed her, pulling her into an embrace so tight it was almost a punishment. His face was buried in her hair. I will not lose you. Do you hear me? I will not lose you. You won't, she whispered, her arms wrapping around his armored back. I'm not afraid anymore. The Red Crown distillery was a cathedral of rust and shadows. It smelled of cold metal, damp concrete, and the ghosts of old whiskey. The moonlight streamed through the shattered skeletons of the high windows, painting the main floor in stripes of silver and black. It was perfect. Domenico's men moved like smoke. Snipers, 2 of them, were nestled in the high gantries, their night vision scopes cutting the darkness. Backup teams, 6 men, were hidden in the old bottling rooms, their weapons ready. Luca was in a van 2 blocks away. his console lighting up with audio and video feeds. Isla stood in the center of the vast, open floor under her coat. She was strapped into a slim, state-of-the-art Kevlar vest. A wire ran from her ear to a transmitter at the small of her back. She was armed with nothing but the truth. Domenico was in the shadows, 20 yards from her, behind a rusted distilling column. He, too, was wired. He was her guardian angel and her executioner, all in one. "He's close," Luca's voice crackled, a whisper in her ear. "2 vehicles, moving fast. They're running. Boss, eager." Isla's heart was a hummingbird. She could feel the cold concrete through the soles of her boots. She was terrified, but it was a new terror. It was the terror of an actress before the curtain. It was adrenaline. It was life. "I'm ready," she whispered, her voice carrying to Domenico and Luca. "Stay on script." Domenico's voice came back, a low, velvet growl in her ear. "I am right here. I will not let him touch you." The rumble of engines, doors slamming, the sound of boots on gravel. The large bay doors of the distillery groaned, pushed open by 2 men in tactical gear, guns raised, Costas men, and then, between them, Nathan stepped in. He was a different man. He was high, his eyes wide and glittering, his movements jerky, but he was also cocky. He was wearing a new, expensive-looking jacket, and he had a gun tucked into his jeans, like a child playing gangster. He thought he was in charge. He scanned the darkness, his gaze landing on her. A slow, triumphant, and utterly deranged smile spread across his face. "Isla," he breathed, his voice echoing in the vast space. He started walking toward her, his arms open. "Baby, you came. You finally came back to me." The Costas men fanned out, their weapons still up, scanning the shadows. They were professionals. Nathan was a fool. "I told you he couldn't protect you," Nathan continued, his voice rising, manic. "I told you he was just another cage, but I'm different. Isla, I'm powerful now. These men work for me. We work for Costas. And he wants you. He wants to thank Domenico for giving you to us." He was 10 feet away now. "It's over, Nathan," Isla said, her voice shaking, but she held her ground. "Over?" He laughed, a high, thin sound. "It's just beginning. You belong to me. Isla. You always have. You were just too stupid to see it. Now you're coming with me. We're going to start over." "She's not going anywhere." The voice came from everywhere. It was deep, it was amplified, and it was pure. Cold command. Nathan froze. The Costas men spun, their guns pointing into the shadows. "Who's there?" one shouted. Domenico Velez stepped out from behind the column, his hands empty, his tuxedo from the gala replaced by a simple, dark turtleneck and black pants. He looked like a panther, all lean muscle and coiled death. He walked calmly, deliberately, until he was standing beside Isla, his shoulder brushing hers. He looked at Nathan. The contempt, the pure, unadulterated loathing in his gaze, was a physical force. "She never belonged to you," Domenico said, his voice quiet, but it carried a blade in the silence. "She is not a thing. She's not a prize, and she's sure as hell." He paused, his eyes flicking to the gunman, and then back to Nathan. "Is not yours." It was the signal. It was not a long, drawn-out battle. It was an execution. The 2 snipers opened fire. 2 headshots. The 2 Costas men closest to Nathan fell before they even heard the sound. The other gunman opened fire, spraying bullets wildly into the shadows. Muzzle flashes lit the room, a strobe light of chaos. "Down!" Domenico roared. He didn't just tell her. He grabbed her, tackling her, his body a shield, just as a spray of bullets ripped through the air where they had been standing. They hit the concrete, hard. The air knocked from her lungs. Domenico was already moving, rolling, pulling her behind the cover of a massive, overturned metal vat. He pushed his own handgun into her hand. "Stay here. Do not move." He was on his feet, his own gun in his hand, a shadow in the strobing light. The men from the bottling rooms were out, returning fire, their shots precise, controlled. It was a 3-sided ambush. Isla crouched, her heart in her throat, the gun heavy in her hand. She watched as one of the last Costas gunmen, desperate, got a bead on Domenico's back. "Domenico!" she screamed. He turned, but he was too late. The man fired. Domenico didn't go down, but he grunted, a sharp, pained sound, as he was spun around, the bullet slamming into his left shoulder. He raised his own weapon. 2 shots, thump thump, and the gunman collapsed. Silence. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of water from the ceiling, and the ringing in her ears. "All clear," Luca's voice said, both in her ear and from the doorway. He and his team were moving in, securing the bodies, but Isla was already moving. She scrambled to Domenico. He was leaning against the column, his face pale, his left arm hanging, blood dripping from his fingers. "You're shot," she whispered, her hands fluttering over the wound. "It's a graze," he gritted, his teeth clamped. "It went through. I'm fine." "You are not fine," she cried, tears of rage and terror blurring her vision. "You idiot, you took a bullet for me. I would take 1,000, he breathed, his good hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb wiping her tears. "He did not touch you." "Boss," Luca shouted. "He's running." Isla looked. Nathan, in the chaos. He had been forgotten. He was scrambling, crab-walking, trying to get to the back door. He was shot. A dark stain was spreading on his pant leg. One of the snipers had tagged him. He was cornered. Luca, a mountain of fury, was stalking toward him. Nathan raised his hands, his gun clattering to the floor. "No, no, please," he whimpered, the bravado gone, replaced by the sniveling coward he truly was. "Please, she made me. It was her fault." Luca just looked at him, picked him up by the front of his jacket, and slammed him against the wall, the sound of his head hitting the brick echoing in the room. It was over. The distant sound of sirens, the real sirens, began to wail. Domenico's men had already called it in. An anonymous tip, a gang shootout, the Costa Syndicate, caught in the act. The Valles crew would be ghosts, long gone by the time the police arrived. Domenico slid down the column, his bad shoulder finally making him weak. He sat on the cold, filthy concrete floor. Isla didn't hesitate. She sat with him, sliding into his lap, her arms wrapping around his neck. Careful of his wound, she was sobbing, a messy, ugly, cleansing cry of pure, unadulterated relief. He was alive. She was alive. He held her with his good arm, his hand buried in her hair, his face pressed against her neck. He was shaking. The Lion of Chicago, the monster in the shadows, was shaking. He held her, surrounded by the echoes of gunfire, his blood on her coat, the smell of gunpowder in the air, and he cradled her as if she were the only thing in the world. "It's over," she whispered, her tears soaking his turtleneck. "It's over." He pulled back, just enough to look at her, his dark eyes, so full of pain and love, finding hers in the dim light. "You'll never be alone again," he promised, his voice a raw, broken vow. "Not while I breathe. You are never, ever alone again." The fall of Nathan was not a loud crash, but a systematic dismantling. There was no dramatic trial, no courtroom theatrics where he could plead his twisted case to a jury. The evidence Domenico's men had gathered was overwhelming, precise, and devastating. The police found him tied up in the back of a van 3 blocks from the distillery, bleeding from a gunshot wound to the leg, with a laptop full of incriminating communications and a bag of narcotics that linked him directly to the Costas distribution network. Because of the connection to the Costas syndicate, the charges were not just local, they were federal. Kidnapping, conspiracy, racketeering, and possession with intent to distribute. The Velez lawyers, working quietly from the shadows, ensured that the prosecutors had everything they needed to bury him. Nathan was looking at 20 years in a federal penitentiary, a place where his arrogance would be eaten alive. The media, however, was a beast that was harder to control. The shootout at the distillery had leaked, as these things always did. The headlines were sensational. Gang war erupts in the old industrial district, the mystery woman at the center of the mob. They called her the girl the Mafia saved. Reporters camped outside her old apartment for a week, but they found nothing. Isla Warren had ceased to exist in that world. She did not give interviews. She did not go on talk shows to weep about her trauma. She simply vanished. High above the city, in the glass fortress of the penthouse, Isla watched the news reports on a muted television screen. She saw grainy footage of Nathan being shoved into a police cruiser, his face pale and terrified. She felt nothing. No pity, no fear, just a quiet, hollow sense of closure. He was a ghost now, a bad dream she had finally woken up from. Her reality was the man sitting in the leather armchair across the room. Domenico was recovering. The bullet had passed through the meat of his shoulder, missing the bone and the artery, but the damage was significant. For a man used to being invincible, the injury was a source of constant, simmering frustration. Isla became his hands. She became his calm. For 2 weeks, she barely left the penthouse. She changed his bandages, her hands steady as she cleaned the angry, red, puckered skin of the exit wound. She helped him dress, maneuvering his stiff arm through the sleeves of his shirts. She cut his food for him, ignoring his grumbles that he was not an invalid. Their bond, forged in adrenaline and violence, shifted into something quieter, deeper and infinitely more domestic. One afternoon, as she was rewrapping his shoulder, his skin hot under her fingers, he looked up at her. His face was drawn, the pain lines etched deep around his eyes. "I hate this," he growled, staring at the ceiling. "I feel useless." "You are healing," Isla said softly. Securing the clip of the bandage, she rested her hand flat against his chest, feeling the steady, powerful thrum of his heart. "You took a bullet, Domenico. You're allowed to be human for a few days." He looked at her then, his dark eyes searching hers. "I'm not used to needing it." "I know," she whispered, leaning down to kiss his forehead, right between his brows. "But I am here. Let me be the strong one for a little while." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, a surrender he would never show the world. In those quiet moments, amidst the smell of antiseptic and cedar, the last walls between them crumbled. She wasn't just the woman he had saved, she was the woman who was saving him right back. The conversation about their future happened on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the shooting. A storm had rolled in off Lake Michigan, battering the city with sheets of gray rain. Thunder rattled the massive windows of the penthouse, and the skyline was dissolved in mist. They were standing by the balcony doors, watching the violence of the weather. Domenico was out of the sling now, though his movement was still stiff. He held a glass of wine in his good hand. "Nathan is gone," Isla said, her voice barely louder than the rain. "The Costas family has retreated back to the south side. It's quiet. For now," Domenico corrected. He never lied to her. That was their silent pact. Isla turned to look at him. The lightning flashed, illuminating the sharp angles of his face, the scar on his brow, the ruthless set of his jaw. He was a dangerous man. He would always be a dangerous man. "What does this look like?" she asked. "Us, the future? I need to know. Domenico, no fairy tales." He set his glass down on the windowsill. He turned to her, stepping into her space, his presence encompassing her. "It won't be clean," he said, his voice low and rough. "I cannot walk away from who I am. I am the head of this family. I have enemies. There will always be threats. There will be days where I come home with blood on my hands, and I will not be able to tell you why. There will be nights where the security detail has to stand outside our bedroom door." He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing over her lip. "People will judge you," he continued. "They will call you a mob wife. They will whisper when you walk into a room. You will never have a normal life, Isla. I cannot give you normal. I can only give you safety. I can only give you everything I have." Isla looked at him. She thought about her old life, the normal life with Nathan, which had been a prison of lies and gaslighting. She thought about the gallery job where she was ignored. She thought about the loneliness that had eaten at her for years. Then she looked at the man in front of her, the man who had noticed a drugged drink in a crowded bar, the man who had stood in front of a bullet for her, the man who treated her scars with reverence. "I don't want normal," she whispered. "I want real. I want you." His breath hitched. "Are you sure? Once you step fully into this, there is no going back." Isla reached up, taking his hand in hers, and pressed a kiss to his scarred knuckles. "I'm already there. Domenico, I walked into the fire with you. I'm not leaving." He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. holding her as the thunder shook the world around them. A month later, the integration was made official. It wasn't a wedding, it was something older, heavier. Domenico took her to a private estate in the countryside, a sprawling manor surrounded by high walls and armed guards. There, in a dining room that looked like it belonged to a king, sat the inner circle of the Valles family. There were captains, old men with hard eyes, and younger men with hungry ones. There were advisors and lieutenants. These were the men who ran the city's underworld. When Domenico walked in, the room stood. He was dressed in a black suit, impeccable, his shoulder healed, his power absolute. But he did not walk alone. Isla walked beside him. She wore a dress of deep crimson silk, modest but striking, her head held high. She did not look at the floor. She looked every man in the eye. Domenico stopped at the head of the table. He did not sit. He placed his hand on the small of Isla's back and looked around the room. The silence was absolute. "This," Domenico said, his voice resonating off the wood paneling, "is Isla. She is my partner. She stands beside me, not behind me. Disrespect to her is disrespect to me, and you all know the price of disrespect." He pulled out the chair in his right hand, the seat of the most trusted advisor, the seat of power. "Sit," he said to her. Isla sat, and one by one. The men around the table nodded. It was an acceptance. It was a coronation. She was no longer an outsider, she was Velez. But Isla was not content to simply be the woman on the throne. She had a fire of her own that needed fuel. With the threat of Nathan gone and her position secured, she told Domenico she wanted to work. Not for him, for herself. He didn't argue. He didn't try to keep her in the penthouse. He simply asked, "What do you need?" She needed a space. 6 months after the night at the distillery, Lumina opened its doors. It was a small, avant-garde art gallery in the heart of the River Court district, just 2 blocks from the Crimson Quill. It was Isla's vision brought to life: stark white walls, industrial lighting, and a focus on artists who had been overlooked, artists who had survived trauma and used their work to scream. The opening night was a sensation. The elite of Chicago came, drawn by the art, but also by the allure of the owner. They wanted to see the woman who had captured the wolf of Chicago. Isla moved through the crowd with a grace she hadn't possessed a year ago. She charmed critics, sold pieces, and managed the room with a subtle, iron control. She was radiant. Domenico stayed in the background. He stood near the entrance, sipping sparkling water, watching her. He let her shine. He let her be the center of the universe. But his eyes never left her. Every person in that room knew that the shadow standing guard by the door was the only reason the lights were on. Toward the end of the night, Isla found a moment to slip away. She was exhausted, her feet aching, her heart full. She retreated to the small private office at the back of the gallery. On her desk, she found a single red rose and a card. She opened it. It was in Domenico's handwriting, sharp and angular. "You outshine them all." She smiled, pressing the card to her chest. She took a pen and a piece of gallery stationery. She wrote a single line, folded it, and handed it to Luca, who was standing guard outside her office door. "Give this to him," she said. Later that night, the penthouse was quiet. The city lights were a soft glow through the glass. Domenico had returned from the gallery after seeing the last guest out. He loosened his tie, the fatigue of the social performance weighing on him. He walked into the bedroom, but it was empty. The bed was made. He saw the balcony door slightly ajar, the white curtains billowing in the night breeze. He walked over and saw the note Luca had given him sitting on the nightstand. He picked it up and unfolded the heavy paper. "I never thought I'd feel safe in the dark again. You brought me back to light." Domenico stared at the words. He felt a tightness in his throat that had nothing to do with sorrow. He, a man who dealt in shadows, had given her light. It was the greatest thing he had ever achieved, greater than any territory, greater than any fortune. He stepped out onto the balcony. She was there, standing at the railing, looking out at the city that was now hers as much as it was his. She was wrapped in a robe of pure white silk, her hair loose and blowing in the wind. She looked like a spirit, ethereal and untouched. She heard him behind her and turned. Her eyes were soft, shining with a love that terrified him in its intensity. "You found it," she said softly. "I did." He closed the distance between them. The wind whipped around them, cold and biting, but he felt only heat. He reached out, his hand sliding under the silk of her robe to rest on her waist. Her skin was warm. "You saved yourself. Isla, I just stood in the way of things trying to stop you." "No," she whispered, stepping closer, her hands coming up to cup his face. "You caught me when I was falling. You didn't just catch me. Domenico, you held me until I remembered how to stand." He looked down at her, at the woman who had rewritten his entire existence. "I love you," he said. The words were rough, unpolished, torn from the center of his chest. He had never said them to another living soul. Isla's breath hitched. A radiant smile broke across her face, more beautiful than any sunrise. "I love you." He kissed her. It was not a kiss for a crowd. It was not a kiss of war. It was a kiss of home. He swept her up into his arms, carrying her from the cold balcony into the warmth of their room. He set her down on the edge of the bed, the city watching silently through the glass. The love that followed was a slow, reverent thing. It was a conversation without words. He undressed her slowly, his hands worshipping every inch of skin he revealed. He kissed the old scars on her soul away, his lips trailing down her neck, her shoulder, the curve of her breast. He treated her body like a sacrament with a tenderness that belied the strength in his hands. Isla met him, touch for touch. She ran her hands over the hard muscles of his back, tracing the ridges of his scars, the map of his violent life. She kissed the healed wound on his shoulder, lingering there, reclaiming the spot where he had bled for her. "Domenico," she sighed, his name a prayer on her lips as he moved over her. He covered her body with his, the weight of him heavy and grounding. He looked down at her, his dark eyes filled with an emotion so raw it burned. He brushed the hair from her forehead, his fingers trembling slightly. They moved together in the quiet dark, a slow, rhythmic tide. It was passionate. Yes, the heat between them was a living fire, but it was more than that. It was an affirmation. With every touch, every soft moan, every whispered promise, they were binding themselves to each other. She arched into him, her nails digging into his shoulders, anchoring him to her. He buried his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling the scent of her, the scent of peace. When the crest came, it was a shared, shattering release that left them both breathless, clinging to each other as the only solid things in a spinning world. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, limbs heavy, the silence of the room thick with contentment. Domenico pulled the duvet up over them, cocooning them against the night. Isla rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. She felt safe. She felt whole. She felt free. Domenico tightened his arm around her, pulling her closer as if he could merge their very selves. He looked out at the balcony door, where the wind was still pulling at the curtains. He reached out to the nightstand, picking up a remote, and pressed a button. The heavy security shutters on the balcony doors began to slide shut, locking with a dull, definitive thud. The city, the noise, the danger, it was all sealed away. He looked down at the woman sleeping in his arms, his fierce, beautiful survivor. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, his voice a low, unbreakable vow in the darkness. "No one's ever touching you again. Not while I breathe. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It has been a journey bringing Isla and Domenico's world to life for you. I hope you enjoyed the twists, the danger, and the romance. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment down below telling me where you are listening from and what you thought of the ending. Did Nathan get what he deserved? If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Mafia Romance Stories channel so you don't miss the next adventure. Your support means the world to me. Stay safe and happy reading.